Okay, what if I told you that we could design the perfect set of rules for just about any situation? I'm talking about an auction, a whole government, or even just a simple negotiation. Well, today we're diving into a Nobel-winning idea that gave us the tools to do exactly that. It's all about this huge shift in economics, from just watching the world to actually, architecting its rules. Let's get into it. So, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the old school foundations of economics. Then, we're going to poke a hole in it, what I'm calling the problem of secrets. After that, we'll meet the brilliant architects who figured this all out, and we'll see how one single master equation turned abstract theory into a tool that literally designs the world we live in today. All right, so first things first, let's set the stage. Modern economics didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was built up in these big stages, or arcs, as they call them. And each new arc asked a deeper, more complex question about how our world really works. So first up, economists had to create the language, right? They used math to describe the world. Then they used that language to ask about efficiency. How do we get the most out of what we've got? And the third big step? That was game theory. It finally admitted that we're all players in this giant strategic game. And this model was powerful, for sure, but it had this one huge, fragile assumption. It basically assumed that everyone at the table could see everyone else's cards. And that, right there, brings us to the massive flaw in the whole design. Because in the real world, we all have secrets, don't we? We all have private info about what we really want, what something's really worth to us, or how hard we're actually willing to work. So that leads to the big question, right? What good are all these beautiful, perfect economic models if they just ignore the fact that people act in their own self-interest using secrets they keep hidden? I mean, how do you design a system that actually works when you can't assume everyone's going to be honest? This exact puzzle is what launched the fourth great arc of modern economics. So this new era, Arc 4, it tackled something called asymmetric information, which is really just a fancy way of saying one person knows more than another. And all of a sudden, the biggest puzzle in economics wasn't just about managing scarce resources anymore. It was about managing scarce truth. It was about figuring out how to design incentives that could, coax that truth out into the open. Okay, so solving a puzzle this big, it wasn't a one-person job. It took a whole team of architects, really, who laid the foundation for a completely new way of thinking. And yeah, they ended up sharing the 2007 Nobel Prize for it. These three guys were kind of the perfect team. First, you had Leonid Hurwicz, the visionary. He's the one who just flipped the entire field on its head. He said, wait, why are we just studying the rules we have? Why don't we design better ones? Then you have Eric Maskin, the realist. He came in and said, hold on, our designs have limits. We can't just create any outcome we want. He's the one who defined the boundaries of what was even possible. But that left this huge hanging question. Okay, within those boundaries, how do we find the absolute best design? And this is where our main character, Roger Myerson, steps onto the stage. He was the master builder. He's the one who took this brilliant, but still very abstract idea and turned it into a practical toolkit. He's the guy who made it possible to actually calculate the answer. And this was the revolution. Seriously. What Myerson showed was that designing the perfect institution, it wasn't philosophy anymore, it was a math problem. Specifically, it was what's called a constrained optimization problem, which I know sounds complicated, but it's just a formal way of saying find the absolute best solution you can given the rules you have to play by. He basically created a toolkit to find the perfect rules for any game, even when the players are holding their cards super close to their chest. His first killer tool was something called the revelation principle. And the idea is just genius in its simplicity. It basically says that for any complicated, messy system of rules you can dream up, there's always a simpler, direct version that gets the same result, where the best thing for everyone to do is just tell the truth. Think about it. It's a massive shortcut. It lets designers just ignore all the crazy ways people might bluff or lie, and instead focus on one single goal: create a game where being honest is the winning move. It's like an economic truth serum. So where did he put this to the test? Well, his most famous application is in auction theory. I mean, it's the classic problem. How do you sell something and get the absolute best price for it? Using that revelation principle, Myerson created a systematic way to design the perfect auction, one that could squeeze every last drop of revenue out of the bidders, because it perfectly accounted for the one secret they all have: how much they're really, truly willing to pay. And he did it with this incredible idea he called virtual valuations. Now, you see this formula on the screen. Don't worry about the math itself. The idea is what's key. What this formula does is brilliant. It takes what a bidder is secretly willing to pay, and it adjusts that number based on how likely they are to be the top bidder. And just like that, it transforms this messy, complicated game of strategy and bluffing into a straightforward calculation. For the very first time, a seller could actually mathematically figure out the exact auction rules that would make them the most money. He made the abstract totally calculable. So let's be super clear here. This isn't just some abstract theory stuck in a textbook. Myerson's work fundamentally changed how we design the actual systems that run our world. I mean it. Mechanism design is like the hidden architecture of our modern world. You know those huge multi-billion-dollar government auctions for the spectrum that makes your phone work? Yep, that's Myerson's ideas at play. The way governments award massive contracts, the way they regulate monopolies, even the way we analyze political systems, all of it uses this blueprint for building smarter, more honest rules. And of course, in 2007, the world officially recognized just how monumental this was. Myerson, along with Hurwitz and Maskin, were awarded the Nobel Prize for essentially creating the entire modern science of how to design our institutions. Okay, so this all builds to our final and maybe the most important point of all. This whole thing, it wasn't just about giving economists a new tool for their toolkit. No, it was a complete redefinition of the central problem that economics is even trying to solve. Think about it. For like 100 years, economics was pretty much about one thing. How do we allocate scarce resources? Who gets the stuff? But mechanism design totally changed the question. The new problem isn't just about how to play the game well, it's about how to design a better game from the start. The big question today is, how do we build institutions that actually work, that can even thrive in a world full of secrets and self-interest? So if you take one thing away from all this, let it be this. Myerson and his colleagues basically added a new law of physics to economics. They showed that the wealth of a nation isn't just limited by its physical stuff, its resources. It's also limited by what are called incentive constraints, which is all about how well your rules motivate people to cooperate and tell the truth. Suddenly, the architecture of our institutions became just as important as the resources in the ground. And that leaves us with one final and I think pretty provocative thought. We now have the tools to actually engineer our social and economic systems to get better results. So the question really isn't for economists anymore, it's for all of us. What other games in our society are broken? Which rules, from how corporations are run to how our political systems work, which ones are completely overdue for a redesign?